Hello patrons, I had a question yesterday from one of your number, from Greg Anderson, who asked me a question which I thought I could answer with a simple straight to camera video. Most of my videos, as you probably know, are scripted and read from a auto prompt, so sorry if this isn't quite as fluid and well edited as usual, but I thought it'd be quite a quick way to give an answer. The question is, David, I was wondering if you could make a video about how a composer should present themselves on social media. I'm just starting to put my music out there and brand myself, but I'm torn about what sort of thing to post and where to spend my time in regard to marketing myself and building a following. I'm pursuing a career in the serious art music scene. Good use of quotes there. If this is not video worthy, I would really appreciate any tips or resources that were helpful to you. So, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on this by any means. I think before I started YouTube, I had just a Facebook account where most of the people on it were people I knew or I'd worked with. I did use it primarily for musical connections kind of thing. I didn't really post that much personal stuff on it. And I also had a Twitter account which I used to follow bits of news that I was interested in, and sometimes I would maybe post, a new concert or some reviews. But on Twitter in particular, it always felt like one of these echo chambers, or as my wife calls it, a mutual admiration society, where it's just a couple of other composers retweeting or liking your comment, or maybe if it was a performer who was involved in the piece that you're talking about, they would be the ones who would retweet it or like it. After several years on Twitter, I've got I had under 1,000 followers, and I didn't feel, although I did it because it was a thing you do, I never really felt like I was very successful at it. Most of the people who did seem to get success tended to have a very strong kind of presence or personality that they could bring, and people were following them as much for that as anything else. And an example I remember particularly is Nico Muhly, who is a very successful composer these days, and as his career was taking off, he was blogging back in the days when blogging was still a thing, and he used to write these very sort of pithy and funny, very very sort of open about his own feelings and reactions, and it made for a really great read. And I often wondered, how much that sort of sense of his personality had helped him as he built his career in the early days, and I think probably quite a lot. So yeah, I'd never at that point before YouTube, I'd never found a way to, I'm not naturally a kind of social media person or somebody who would present themselves in some cool way. So I was never quite sure what to do, especially in contemporary classical music. The piece itself is very rarely going to get a big crowd, a big following just from the piece. So it is something that's very difficult to build just using your probably quite socially awkward personality, if you're anything like me, or your not very popular mainstream music. And how do you then go about promoting yourself in any way? I noticed the comparison particularly with a friend of mine who's done very well as an instrumentalist in the classical world. Things build a momentum. You get enough different concerts going that people do start following you and recognizing you, and things sort of snowball. And I think even for really successful composers, it's very difficult to reach that level of success that people, genuine fans, come back to your stuff. So after I started my channel, I opened an Instagram account. I hadn't done that, but that's obviously for mainly young people on there. It was quite a different crowd from Facebook. And almost everyone who follows me on Instagram have come through my channel. I've put out, I've mentioned the links in the videos, but without a huge amount of effort on my part, they just have come to it. And it's amazing the difference in reception that I get, So these feel like people who are just genuinely interested through the channel in what I'm saying and the kind of things I'm up to. So it's the first time really, and the same has happened with Twitter, that it's taken off a little bit more in the last year or so. I'm still not on huge numbers on either. I'm around 1,000 mark, but it started to feel like the people who are on them are there genuinely because they're interested in what I'm doing and what I'm saying mainly on YouTube, obviously. So I think that ties in with this idea that, people have started to get to know my perspective and my outlook, and they are thankfully interested somewhat in it, and that's what's allowed that to start building. And before I had YouTube, the only way anyone would have into my outlook would be to hear a piece of music, or maybe go to my blog when I did a few blog posts. But you could never really, as I say, get that momentum and make something grow. So the only advice I have really is to think of ways that you might add to the way that you come across and the way people can become genuinely interested. I mean, comedy is definitely one way, education is another. All of these, things that people do on YouTube. So the starting point has to be you as a brand, you as your personality, and how that personality comes through the music. So is there a way that you can let people into your personality more than you would just through your music? You might want to write about particular subjects on a website, or you might want to do YouTube, or maybe there's different ways that you can handle Instagram and Instagram stories that people might find interesting. I'm the sort of person that cringes when somebody says, you need to get yourself out there in marketing, and I would never have done anything like that. I never did do anything like that. I didn't really think of YouTube like that that was my reasoning behind starting it, wasn't to do with that. And, it probably has been the best marketing campaign for my own music that I could have done. People do come and listen to my music in its various outlets, clearly having come from watching me on the YouTube channel. But I never wanted to think of it like that, and I probably would have turned my nose up at the idea if I'd have thought of it in those terms. So I suppose try and keep your mind open to ways that outside of the traditional marketing, ways that you might be able to present your brand, as you call it. I hope that's of some help. If any other patrons have any interesting questions you think I could talk about in this kind of format, I'd be happy to do so. So let me know.